Join us for interviews with solutionaries from around the world as we engage you, our viewers, in the exciting and adventurous journey toward a new world. A world that works for everyone.
All right. Hello, everyone. Everybody who's watching this live and anyone who's watching this on the replay, thank you for joining us. I'm Michal Dash, joined with Matt Chandler, and we're here to help facilitate value to the New Earth Land Projects group. And today we are discussing the topic of water. We had two panelists, but if you can see now, there's just one, even though there's like 5 boxes up. There's one panelist today, and his name is Justin Lofton. Our second panelist is under the weather a little bit. I spoke to him, and you would not be able to decipher his answers if we brought him on here because his voice is very raspy. So we're going to go with Justin, and what would be great, Justin, is if you could just introduce yourself real briefly, and then we will, discuss a variety of questions that were sent in to us. And I know you describe yourself as a water geek. So what comes with being a water geek?
Well, just to kind of give some background, I've been an entrepreneur since I was a kid. So really always in the mode of like, how can I solve problems and help people? Obviously, at some point in our careers, we kind of get into the monetary, creation part of entrepreneurship. But now more than ever in my life, I'm all about working with businesses and projects that raise the frequency, vibration, and energetics for humanity as a collective. So being here today is a real blessing for me to be able to have this opportunity to discuss and answer questions. And by no means am I any special guru or anything like that, but I've had enough experience in the traditional industry because I own quality water treatment with several other partners. We sell water softeners, RO systems, alkalizers, ionizers, structured water devices, whole house water filters, and we sell commercially and residentially. So I have some experience there, but more so in my own journey of unraveling who we are and where we are. And I really came across water and its power and its ability to support the body in healing and nourishment. And I went really deep into the topic maybe a decade ago, and have been, deeply into that journey ever since, both in plasma GANs, structured water. Like, we'll dive into it here today, but it's just a real passion for me. And so everything, like, I won't go to a restaurant and drink the water because I just won't, it's just, I know what's I know what's going on in water and why it's so important. And, that it is life. Water is life. So it's important for us to know beyond just drinking this fluid, what it's doing to the body and how it's coming into us, even as we breathe air, we're drinking water. So
great.
That makes me a water geek because I'm thinking about it all the time.
I appreciate that. I guess just to start off, for anyone who's kind of new to the topic, what is the difference between structured and unstructured water?
Yeah, basically, it boils down to, and a lot of folks have gone down the topic of sacred geometry as well, but it's really about being in alignment or in harmonic balance with nature or not. So to make it a little bit more clear, because just using the word structured or unstructured, those words are really related to the geometry of the water and the water molecule as it's in its specific form. So stagnant water that has been sitting still for a long period of time will over time become unstructured, whereas water moving across rocks in a river is going to stay structured for a very long time because it's moving and it's continuously being double vortex, which then structures the water, making it living water. Most of the water that humans are consuming or showering in is dead water. It means that, water itself is a hard drive, and the only way to erase that hard drive is to structure it or to double vortex it, which brings it back into harmonic balance and allows that water to hold information. And so whatever information you put into that structured water can support the body and or other living organisms. in that structured form. So, you know, people today have to consume more than triple the amount of the water that the body really needs, because most of that is dead water. So the body itself has to restructure the water that's coming in, which is actually a burden on the body. It's not in harmonic balance. So the cells of our body can only consume or use structured water. So the body, as it would break down food, has to restructure the water, which is what creates some of the challenges from contaminants and fluoride and other things in the water. Because if you have dead water, the body has to store those toxins away, typically in adipose tissue or fat tissue. And so most adipose tissue or fat tissue in the body is toxins that have been consumed by the body in one form or another, and your body is trying to protect the vital organs back to making a tone or music or harmonics. That's why they're called the organs, and they are vital to your body's well-being. So basically what's happening, and when you consume structured water, even if it does contain those contaminants, the body can actually excrete those toxins through urine and other in the lymph system directly. So a lot of the challenges and concerns that humans have about contaminants in water or fluoride or other things in water that could be harmful or make the water hard, or all these, you know, various challenges that we face with all the dead water that we generally are interacting with, really can't harm the body when it's consumed through structured water, because that water is aligned harmonically with what nature and the body needs. So it's a deep topic, but I think it's part of what I hope to do today is break a lot of the mental belief systems and cycles that, you know, it's all about removing stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all about trying to get water to 0 parts per million and really, you know, getting it to, you know, a clean state. But if you're not structuring water, your body is working hard and your plants are working hard to use that water to express fully what your DNA wants to express. So hopefully that made sense.
Thank you. I did have something on that, Michael, a follow-up. So you mentioned too that you like filtering the water first, right? You like it, ideally it's clean. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on, you know, how much filtering matters when you are doing a structuring type thing. Yeah, like what is that trade-off? Because I'm sure you can't just, yeah, I'm curious, like, you know, have decontaminated water, even though you're structuring it at the end, you're not still purifying it, which I know that like a lot of areas, you know, these regenerative communities are being built in, their water is not naturally, you know, there are still some like parasitic, different things like that. So and even from, you know, if you're pulling the water from the earth through a well or other means, you know, you're not, unless you do a water test and figure out what's in there, you could be dealing with something. We find that quite a bit in the business where people have well water, and based on the area that they're in, there's stuff in the water you definitely would prefer not to be consuming. I think at the end of the day, it's like, if you had a choice of consuming an organic strawberry that hasn't been sprayed versus one that's been sprayed, at the end of the day, like, you probably prefer to eat the one that hasn't been sprayed, because you know your body's going to have to deal with the chemicals, whatever they may be, even though you'll get the nutrition from the strawberry. In the case of, because this is definitely something that, and I even thought about this before this call, like, as we're all trying to build community, you know, what would I, in terms of both economically rolling out water systems that can be easily obtained both monetarily, and maybe even making some of these structured water devices, you can make them yourself. Very simple, and I'll explain that. But to answer your question, yeah, ideally I'd want to filter first. But with that said, like, if you don't structure water and you just drink filtered water or RO'd water, the reality is, because water is a hard drive, it still remembers the information associated with what those contaminants were. So maybe on a chemistry level or molecular level, your body wouldn't have to deal with, it wouldn't be as much of a
a challenge for the physical body to transform that water. But the memory in the water, in terms of your cell and your cells being triggered by that water, it would still remember that there was fluoride. It would still remember that there were these contaminants in the water, which would then distort the frequency of that water coming into the cells. So the idea would be to filter water, which is really more of a mental thing. Like, I've spent hours talking to Clayton, who I mentioned, who's, I think 85 years old now. The guy looks 70. He spent 40 years studying water for the US government. And basically what he said was, the reality is, if you structure water, yeah, your body's going to have to deal a little bit with taking in any contaminants and processing that, but the body's very good at that. And those contaminants almost will not have an ability to affect the body. It will just come out in the urine or the lymph system. The challenge is that when you are drinking dead water, unstructured water, and those contaminants are there, that's when the body has to both turn that into a living structured water and then shuttle those toxins off to another place in that process, where it tends to stay in the body, in the tissues. So for me, I'm still, hey, filter first and structure after. Structure as close to consumption as you possibly can, whether you're watering a plant, taking a shower, or cooking.
Yeah.
Super. So as we know, most of the people that are in this group have either communities set up, or they're either looking to set up communities. What does it take to set up a home, a village, a community with basic drinking water requirements?
Yeah, that's the question I know was going to come, and I want to take it in several stages. I think, like, right away, I would just put a structured water device wherever it makes the most sense. Again, you would want it as close as possible to the community. Obviously, if you can access water that's already in a moving stream, you're way ahead of the game, because that water is structured. And structured just means it's double vortex. Like, when every time you take a breath through your nose, your body is actually double vortexing that air to ensure it's structured. And air is just a gas form of water. That's why we have different humidity levels. You're actually consuming water every time you take a breath. So, this isn't some sort of like voodoo magic that's going on. It's just double vortexing the water, which then erases the memory of the water and makes it in alignment with nature. And you can get that through rainwater, moving streams, and fruits and vegetables. So that's why the power of consuming fruits and vegetables is so good for the body, because it's in harmonic balance, and even more so with fruit because it's closest to the sun, so it holds more biophotonic energy, and it's in structured water. So now you get the combination of the frequencies of that particular fruit, and that fruit's ability to bring light into the body in different ways and different frequencies, and then you're consuming structured water. So I definitely would highly advise, I know I'm going off topic a little bit here, but I highly recommend it. It helps you understand what structured water is. It's nature's water. It's living water, and that is stored in fruits and vegetables as well. So the power of juicing fruits and vegetables, it's a game changer in your ability to open consciousness and align the water and frequencies that your cells and your DNA want to express. Moving in the direction of consuming more fruits and vegetables are going to do that for you. But continuing on, for water for a community, I really would just get a structured water device in place. Super simple. You can make one yourself. I buy the quartz crystal balls from a lady off of Amazon. I'm sure you can find her, because she's probably the only one that has them. It doesn't really matter, any quartz crystals, pink or clear, is fine. And you can just buy a big 2-inch or 1.5-inch coupling for PVC coupling, and you just load it up, you just stagger the crystal balls 2 by 2 all the way through the coupling, and you can put that in line anywhere that's coming into, whether it's water coming into a tank or water that is going directly into a home. So I would start there. I would start by either purchasing one online. Clayton Natural Action is the company that sells them. We sell them at my company. His are going to be more advanced, more fancy and all that, but you're going to pay a premium. You could make your own as well, probably for $50, $60 by the time you get it all in your hands and take a trip to the hardware store. I would do that first, because then everything coming in is structured, and you can kind of let down sort of the mental worries or concerns that I think a lot of us have around water and whether it's good for us or harming us. Naturally, the structured water is going to feel softer. So if you have a lot of minerals in the water, which many folks do, which is why they typically buy water softeners, then it's going to naturally soften that water just by structuring it, which is helpful. And then from there, and again, I would likely recommend structuring right into a tank, and then structuring again as it's going to any particular home or building structure. And then from there, then you could layer in I would just probably layer in you could go with like a whole house carbon system, but I would just start with an RO. If you're structuring and you're ROing, it's a pretty darn good start,
Can you elaborate on ROing, what that definition of that term, what that means?
Yeah, reverse osmosis. Reverse osmosis is able to remove a lot of the contaminants that most of us are concerned with. They can't deal with all of it, can't deal with fluoride and some others, but it's a great, in terms of price point and its ability to remove a lot of the contaminants that could harm the body, especially if coming through in dead water. It's kind of a good balance of like, again, I'm a freak and I like to get things to 0 ppm. The water here in Nicaragua is a company called Agua Roca that pulls it from the spring and then does a lot of different ozone and alkalizing and cleaning, and it's about 7 to 19 parts per million. Like that's good water. It's got some minerals still in it, and they've done some good stuff to it. And then I turn around and structure it. So at the end of the day, whatever it takes to get to remove as much as you can. But I think reverse osmosis is a cost-effective way to get most of the job done. That even at a community level, you could afford to buy a commercial reverse osmosis system, maybe for $1,000, $1,200, and it would serve you well.
How many, let's say, homes would that serve? When you're talking about at a community level, how large of a community are you speaking to?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge with the RO systems is that they do waste, it's a 1-to-1 on water wasted to water filtered. So you do have some loss there. So that there may be, depending, and to answer your question, it's not that many. I mean, you as you scale up, you start to get into bigger and bigger systems. That's why, in terms of building community and making sure that, hey, we can do our best to get things going and just get water structured. And then I would even look at, there's sort of like a break point where after so many homes, maybe call it 8 to 10, it might be smarter to put the filtering at the edge, put it in the home right before consumption, because these bigger systems, one, it's a single point of failure. Two, it can be very costly to buy these larger commercial systems. Do you have the manpower or the expertise on site to manage those systems, or even around your community, having somebody come and service those systems? Maybe, probably not, right? So there's a point where you can structure and even store water at the community level, but you may want to decide to filter at the individual home level so that you can minimize costs. I mean, I'm not a big fan of anybody having, everybody running around and buying a dishwasher or buying a washing machine. I'd rather do that at the community level. But when in terms of right now, the cost effectiveness and the ability to maintain those systems without a single point of failure, I like the distributed model of maybe moving both another layer of structuring and filtering at each home.
So you would say, what I'm hearing is you would say that maintenance is a big consideration as you scale up your community.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a part of it, right? When you're dealing with systems that have filters or have certain things that, you know, regeneration and different things that these bigger systems do. One, you've got to have expertise that knows how to operate the systems. And two, you just have to be aware that if something goes wrong, what does that mean for the community? If it's all centrally, you know, who's going to come and service it or address it? There's a problem. Mm-hmm. And with the smaller systems, you know, they're cost effective and they're available, and you don't have to be an engineer to sort it out, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted to circle back to something you just mentioned earlier about filtrating the water and the wasted water. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think everybody in this group cares about waste. So I wanted to ask, are there uses for this wasted water? Are there other ways you can use it instead of it just completely being wasted? And is it like a one-to-one?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that, you know, I think as a community, we should be utilizing the gray water, right? So any gray water should be recaptured and reused in agriculture and in other ways. Nature will handle it as it always does. But yeah, I think if we inherently have systems in place to recapture gray water and reuse that in some way, that's how I would reuse that water for sure.
How would you reuse it?
Agriculture.
So gray water ideally is okay to use on agriculture, like for, you know, watering plants.
Nature's going to deal with it. Yeah, nature knows how to deal with it. Yeah, and again, for the plants, like there's tons of evidence that structuring the water so again, I'd structure that gray water before it ends up on the plant, and that water is going to be alignment, and the plants grow faster, they grow bigger, they don't need the chemicals to protect them as much. They put out a stronger frequency so the bugs don't want to eat them. So using structured water in agriculture and even plasma to some degree, which is another topic all in itself, is definitely allow growth of plants a lot faster and stronger.
Nice. Yeah. So how do you touched on it briefly, but how do the economics fall into place here? You know, how much are one of these solutions that you're talking about, like per house versus like per community with 12 to 15 houses?
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, I think what you would run into is, you know, mostly our reverse osmosis systems run $350. You know, even if you had a structured device before, you know, on the main line as it enters the home, again, you can make one for a few $100s. Even if you bought a commercial one, you know, that's going to cost you $500-600 probably. So, you know, per household, probably $500 to $1,000 if you did it in a distributed model. And, you know, at a community level, if you try to do it there, you're going to spend $5 to 10 grand probably putting in a system to serve 10 to 12 homes probably. And again, it just comes with the centralized risk and also the need for having smart enough people to deal with that system if something goes wrong. Yeah. So for me, like if I were, and I am building community here in Nicaragua, you know, I would structure the water at the source, or at least before it enters the water tank that I'm using for the community, and then I would do it again. I would structure and filter at the home is probably what I would be doing. Just so that you restructure, because every time it could be structured already, and this could be another layer, like, you know, quantum structuring the water. So every time you run the water back through these crystal quartz balls, it allows the water to take up more chi, prana, Tesla, scalar, whatever label you want to call it, this energy that's in the ether. It allows the water to hold, because every time you're erasing the hard drive, it actually can hold on to more chi prana energy. So the other thing that I would do is, at the water tank in the community, I would have essentially a little sump pump with one of those. Here, let me grab one. I'll show it to you so you can see it. It's very simple. I have one here that I used to.
Just a random sump pump laying around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the coupling that has the crystal quartz balls in it.
Okay.
So you can order the crystal balls off Amazon. You can go to any Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever you got, and buy these couplings, and you just load it in there. And what I would do is I would have a sump pump connected to this on the outside of the sump pump, and I would just run that thing for like 20-30 minutes a day, just running the water that's inside the tank. So you just get a garden hose out of one side of the sump pump and another on the other end, and you're just circulating that water, keeping that water from getting stagnant and keeping it fully structured. And by running it for 20 or 30 minutes, you're gonna increase the prana chi energy in that water. So you're basically taking this, this structured water, this living water, and growing its light through the ability to just keep sending it back through the crystal balls over and over and over again. And that water is just so powerful. I mean, it's transformative. The cells of your body wants to express your full DNA, and it can't without this type of water and this energetic. So what happens over time is your body gets used to consuming this water. You can up it over time, like you can run it for an hour, and you can run it for 2 hours, and your body adjusts to that light coming in through that water. And you're not going to be as hungry. Like, the reason the body is hungry is because it needs frequencies coming in to keep your organs in harmonic balance. So when you take in this, same with fruit juice, it's so powerful that when you are juicing or you're drinking this kind of quantum water, the body isn't going to be hungry all that often. You're going to be less and less hungry for food. So it's because the cells of your body are getting the light that it needs to be in harmonic balance. So there's less need for external consumption of food. So again, very inexpensively, you could turn those giant tanks, which almost every community is going to have, both for reserve and also just having, pressurized water, even if it's coming from a natural source. You can have those tanks just freaking holding amazing, super structured water ready to serve the community, which then just changes the energetics of the community, right? Everyone's healthier, everyone's not in, such need for even consumption. All these things are going to play out energetically in the communities by simply putting in these simple structuring devices that you can make yourself.
Wow.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for that detailed visual explanation.
Yeah.
We had a question from, I'm not sure if you know Francois Legault. I'm not sure if I pronounced it right or not, but he's in the group and he's in Nicaragua. And he is part of the initiators group of Self-Sustainable Eco-Village Project on the island of Ometepe. Did I say that right?
Yeah, I do know him. Yeah, he's a good friend.
Okay, great. He asked the question that he's been trying to resolve the water issue for plants in the dry season, which is, according to him, half of the year down in Nicaragua, and you're living there, so you would know.
I know that. Mm-hmm.
He's researched the Wilhelm Reich technique?
Yeah, William Reich.
William Reich, and he knows that this can be a reachable solution, working with simple devices and downgrading plasmatic water into liquid water. And he wanted to know, he's still researching it. So he wanted to know, what are your opinions on this? Since you're in Nicaragua, what are you doing to help solve the lack of water in the dry months? And what would your advice be?
Well, in one of my businesses here, Prima Evo, it's a grocery delivery service, and we have our own hydroponics farm. So hydroponics is going to be a great way to minimize the amount of water you need to continue to grow, because 90% of the water is recaptured and used over and over again. There's very little loss, only some through evaporation, because you do use misting and spraying water on top of the plant, so you do get some evaporation there. But beyond that, it would be just digging deeper wells, you know, going deeper to get water out of the ground during that season, and having the appropriate irrigation systems in place. And there's so much rain. Like, I mean, right now we're still in rainy season here, and like it would just blow your mind how much rain comes down. And it's a combination of storage and using tanks, and digging deeper wells, and then considering hydroponics in more of an enclosed type system where you're controlling the water flow and there's a lot less water loss. That would be where my mind goes initially, with what we have available, you know, more readily than trying to solve it in any other way right now.
What do storage tanks look like too?
They're just giant plastic, you know, round, and you can put them up on a hill so that you already have the natural pressure from gravity, or people, you know, they put them on big towers, you know, yeah, you can use you can either, you know, they make them out of metal structures, or you can use like a palapa style frame to put these tanks on, and yeah, they work great. A lot of people, that's what you're going to see here. There's a ton of people, a lot of people in Nicaragua, they just dug a well on their land, and they don't use the city water. And so what they do is they'll pump that water out of the well up into the tank, and then they both have some reserve as well as pressurized water for the home. Pretty simple system, you know, and inexpensive.
Yeah, maybe that can off grid create a nice brainstorming conversation between you and Francois next time you
yeah,
see
he and I, our conversations are very geeky for sure. Yeah, Ometepe is beautiful too. If you do get to Nicaragua, you'll definitely want to visit the islands of Ometepe. So, incredible.
Right. What would you say are so there's a lot of people in this group who are putting projects together. They don't have land yet, but they're searching for land and they have a project plan. What would you say are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen people not do in the investigation and understanding of the water capabilities of the land that they're about to purchase?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's funny because, you know, especially here in Nicaragua, like you could come in and make a purchase during the rainy season and not realize that your land is going to be like a desert in 6 months. You know, so I think it's important that you, whatever land you're looking at, you either talk to someone that lives locally and is willing to share with you, kind of, you know, has an understanding of farming and other things that might affect, you know, your ability to live there. What I do find is that people don't think through that or talk enough with people that are in the local area where they're buying land to best understand the seasonality of that land, and also get a good grasp on what may or may not grow there based on the experience of others that live in and around. The other thing is they don't really think about the water as much as they should. They don't survey to find out how deep they're going to have to dig to get water from a well. They're not in full awareness of how close a river is to that property, which can be super important. It also can be, you know, something to be concerned of if you're in a rainy season and that river overflows and it comes into your land, right? So it's one about source, and it's also about being an awareness of what happens to that land when it does rain, right? There's places here in Nicaragua where you have $1 million mansion on the beach and the lot next to it is a swamp. So when it rains, so now you have mosquitoes and everything else around your $1 million property on the beach because you didn't think about the lot next to you, which you don't own, being a swamp full of mosquitoes. So, you know, it's all these types of things, but I think most importantly is, hey, where is the closest water source? Is it coming from the city? Is there a river or other water flowing in the area, lakes, etc.? Or, you know, how deep am I going to have to how deep am I going to have to dig to get the water in the ground and put in a well? And what is that going to cost me? And what is the time frame to get that done? Sometimes it's not expensive, but you know, that happens here in Nicaragua. Things aren't necessarily expensive, but they take a lot of time. So we're either trading off dollars or time, and it's good to know that. And then again, just talking with the people that live in that area, or having the ability to be on the land, or at least observe the land during different seasons, is going to help you better understand how to develop that land, and or is that the land that's going to best serve your community.
Just based on my experience investigating different land in Costa Rica, that understanding the local and country laws are extremely important also.
No question. Yeah, I think that's a given. Yeah. Yeah. You can't come in and
surprised
with your own
though, right?
ideas.
If they're not talking
if
we're not talking to the neighbors about it, then, because I think that would be a given also. So I just wanted to put it in context, because learning about some of like how many people are actually getting water illegally was actually extremely surprising to me in my investigations in Costa Rica.
Yeah, no, on the other side of that in Costa Rica, which is, it's not like this here, is like they want to give you a permit for everything. You know, you want to breathe on the land, you need a permit. You know, it's like, so you have to deal with that and know what they expect, you know, of a landowner, in terms of, just because you own the land doesn't mean you can just run around and do whatever you want on that land in Costa Rica, as opposed to Nicaragua. They don't really care what you're doing. You can build whatever you want. You can do kind of whatever you want for the most part. Totally different. Yeah.
So I mean, listening to that, I imagine every country kind of has its own idiosyncrasies, which makes it, you know, that much challenging from going to optimizing things locally to optimizing things globally. So how do you look at a strategy that we be able to do something like that, so we guarantee access to all humans and animals to have healthy water?
I mean, that's something that source God has to come in and support us with. I mean, I think a lot of this is playing out. We know that it is, and a lot of things are going to benefit humanity as a whole in all of these areas. But I think just having a basic understanding of what the power of water and its ability to serve you, your own body vessel, and or the crops that you're trying to grow, it's super important, because we've just been consuming this crap water forever, and it really is a game changer. And I know for some people, you know, saying, oh, running water through quartz crystals, this guy's out of his mind, you know, it's because we've just been programmed to believe something else. And it's as simple as basically investing. And I'd happily hold anybody's hand through the process of making their own device and putting it into their home, or even using it with their own water dispenser and just running it through these devices. Like, that basic shift within yourself is going to open you up to understanding more about, you know, that question you just asked. How do we do this in a way that serves all of humanity? And again, I think you start structuring water, you start, you know, bringing life back into water. And I think we can all do that with very little money and very little even understanding. It's like you turn on a light switch, doesn't mean you know how to put together an electrical system in a home. I think if we can get to some understanding of the power of water and the ability of how simple it is to actually structure water for each of us, that's going to open that door to set the stage for everybody to have access to clean, consumable water. The cities, the governments, they're not going to do it for us, so we have to do it.
Yeah. I'm curious how you feel about the commercialization of water over the past decade or two, where a lot of companies who may or may not be in business for the right reasons have obviously seen the trend towards bottled water, right? Just in the world. Some of it has been falsely advertised over the years, and some companies have been, their hands have been slapped and everything. But how do you feel about it, number one, and what should we as consumers look out for when it's such a competitive space now? I mean, it's overtaken soda, it's overtaken everything in terms of drinking and commercialization. You can find bottled water anywhere, almost, that you're traveling to, and some of it is good, and some of it is just not. Like, I know for me, I've always been before I moved to Mexico, I was always a Fiji water drinker, and people in my office would call me a Fiji snob. And because I would buy regular water for the office and I would drink Fiji. I know I was a terrible human. Now I'm in Mexico. I bought a Kangen machine and I filtrate everything through that. So there's people who would tell me Fiji water wasn't as good as I proclaimed it to be. And now there's people telling me Kangen machines are BS and they're not really that great. So like, you just hear it from everywhere, which is why I'm curious about like your thoughts on it, and why I mean, obviously it's a money thing, but like some solutions better than no solution, but I'm sure there are solutions that aren't really solutions.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, the solution is basically people stop giving away their energy to government and their power to government and starting to do things on their own. As soon as people do things on their own and harvest their own water and do the things we're talking about today and in community, the sooner those companies have no advantage, and the sooner the governments that give them all these incentives and give them access to the water that belongs to the people goes away. Like, if people are in ignorance and continue to drink bottled water, well, they're going to keep selling it to you until we as a collective stand up and say, you know what, the incentives you give to these giant corporations that just tap right into the water source that belongs to the people. So, I mean, everything in this game that we're experiencing, I mean, buying power from a power company, no, every power pole and every line that was drawn was paid for by the people. So why are we paying for something we already paid for? It's the same thing with water. Like, they're tapping into the earth's supply of water and putting it in a plastic bottle and then charging you for it for something you already have. The people already own it. So all these systems are going to fall apart, and in that will be an awakening of the broader humanity that continues to consume. I mean, there's been a growing trend because in consciousness is growing, and people are realizing, well, maybe I shouldn't drink Coca-Cola every day, or maybe I shouldn't drink beers all day long. I should move into fruit juices and waters, and these are conveniently found in my convenience store, which I've always bought from. So, I mean, this is a normal progression, and why that industry has grown and continues to grow and does get commercialized until we reach this point where we can, come together in groups and start building communities and start taking control of our own well-being, both in water and food and the things that we're co-creating together, as opposed to relying on these giant corporations that have fed us for many decades and continue to do that, right? So there's no like externalized answer. The answer's inside each individual to decide to stop doing that. When the consumption falls off, then that dissolves, basically.
Yeah.
And I mean, everybody's going to battle over alkalized water, Kangen water. At the end of the day, most of it's dead water. So whether they're electrifying it like Kangen does, or they're alkalizing it, which is all good stuff, and it does benefit an acidic body, a body that's out of harmonic balance. Generally, most of our bodies are acidic based on our consumption, and we're being sprayed, and all kinds of things are being done to the body without our knowledge. Generally, the water will help the cells of the body come closer to harmonic balance. But if you can combine those, like combine a Kangen, combine alkalization or ionization with structuring, then you get a double whammy. You get living water, which you need a third of the consumption to get the benefit and hydration that you need, and you can also benefit from the the pH balancing and electrification in the case of the Kangen, you can get great benefits. It's just about bringing that structured element, which has been sort of hidden from society on its ability to really transform water and the health benefits that come with that.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then this call, this call could have gone in the direction of way deep into filtering and using bone char to get fluoride out, and all these other KDF filters and softeners and all the, you can go down the rabbit hole of things to remove and filter water. So I've tried to keep it more on why structured water is important and staying there, because if you can get that basic gnosis, then the rest of it is far less important. It is important, but it's not really the big picture, with water.
Yeah, and we appreciate that, because I think once you get down that rabbit hole, we lose half the audience.
Yeah.
And if they want to pursue that, then that's something they're going to ultimately pursue on their own, or they'll connect with you offline. So keeping it on a macro scale is super important, and is triggering me to just circle back to the surveying point that you made earlier. To make sure that if you're new and you're approaching a purchase of land for a community, that you have it surveyed before, which should be a basic understanding. In the surveying for water, what should people be looking for? The things I heard you say, and I just want to repeat them, and this may or may not be part of the survey, but how close is the closest river? How far do you have to dig for a well? How deep do you have to dig? How much will it cost? And what will happen in rainy season if a river is really close to you? And how will that affect your land? What are some other things from a surveying standpoint that people should be looking for?
Yeah, how deep are you going to have to dig that well to get to the water? And then how much time is that going to take? Because I think timing is an issue, because in certain countries, like here in Nicaragua, you hire a bunch of muchachos, and they're going to hand dig that thing, and it's going to take them a while to do it. In other countries, they bring a machine out and they can dig it in a few weeks or something, But so you understanding that will help you understand, okay, how soon and what is the rest of the build out of the community look like, because you're going to need water. Even in construction, you're likely going to need water for part of that. So time is really, I think, the factor that most people underestimate in terms of getting access to the water. Or if you're not digging a well and you're getting access through river or whatever, what type of piping and other things you have to put in place to start capturing some of that water, and the time it's going to take to put that in place.
Got it.
If you can get past that, then you're in a good place.
I was curious to ask, do you know of any measuring type, like maybe test or something for a couple different things? One being the purity of the water, like for parasites or any kind of other activity that may not be wanted. Is there any cheap, let's say, or really cost-effective tests that people can do themselves? And then the other thing was around testing around the structured water. Is there a way to test the structured water to find out, like, I don't know how you would describe it, but like the strength of it, or like how structured it actually is, right? And I've heard several things about structuring being like, once it hits a 90-degree angle or a turn in plumbing, that it kind of disrupts the structuring into some degree. And that's why I think you mentioned to have it as close to the point when it's used as possible. But I was just curious, is there a way to test that as far as from the structuring end, as well as is there any cost-effective ways just that of tests that are easy to run for people to like see, oh, this water's clean or not clean?
Yeah, there's plenty of I shouldn't say plenty. There's a handful of companies that do water testing. It's about $150. Definitely a great investment. They pull some water out and send it off to them, and they do a full, they have a full lab, so they're looking at every element that you could think of. Anything like anything that you would use and test yourself is going to test for 1, maybe 2 potential contaminants or whatever. So by the time you bought all the different tests and tried to do it yourself, you'd be so frustrated and wouldn't really know what you ended up with anyway. I would send it to these companies. There's a few of them in the States, and I'm sure in every country there's at least one company that has the labs there to test for, give you a full spectrum of contaminants or bacteria or other things that may be in your water. We do that a lot with our customers that have well water. We have them send it off for testing because we don't know what to try and remove or what needs to be removed without first knowing what's in the water, as opposed to, someone that's on city water. At least in the United States, those city water companies have to put out an annual report that tells you what's in the water. So you already kind of know what you're dealing with. And you'd be surprised at how many of the local water companies in the United States, they're either exceeding or they're at illegal ranges of contaminants in their water, and people have no idea that they're just loaded with contaminants. They think that the water coming from the city is somehow safe. It's not. And so yeah, there's several labs that can test the water. I would recommend doing that. And in terms of structured water, I believe there is a device. I don't know the name of it offhand. I believe there is a device that allows you to measure at least the spectrum of the water, which would give you some indication of its energetics and how structured it is, if at all. So there is a device that I'm not sure it's something you can buy off Amazon, but it does exist. I think at the end of the day, when you start to play around with these types of devices and put them in your home and consuming the water, you feel it. You feel it's different. It's completely different. So you get better at, your own intuition can be that instrument that tells you whether the water is good for you or not. And yes, I used to love Fiji water too, and it is different. It's better.
It is.
Yeah.
But I would tell everybody,
Yeah.
It's interesting. You mentioned like the states, I think, and I really didn't recognize any issues with water, and I didn't recognize how it was controlled, and I didn't know that there were specific actually families who control water lines. And I saw this super powerful documentary called Water and Power. And I would definitely, recommend that to anybody. It will really open your eyes about how different water lines are controlled by these powerful families for hundreds of years. And I think the premise of it was like during one of the drought seasons in California, the water family was allowed to use as much water as they wanted to grow almond trees and start producing almond milk, while the government was regulating the amount of water that families and people would have access to, which was unbelievable. Just your mind blows as the almond milk industry just grew to such a huge, out of nowhere, boom, all of a sudden it was on every shelf you could see. And it sounds like you saw that documentary. It was just mind opening.
Yeah, it's the same thing. They're not charging like companies like Coca-Cola to farm the water that they turn around and put in the product, but then they charge everybody else for the water. So it's nonsense.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the almond milk. It's like they don't even say almond milk on the package because it's not milk. They call it a beverage because it's got so many other chemicals and everything in it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, just like all the alternative milks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get too off topic, I really appreciate all your time and all your knowledge with this, Justin. I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people. Any final thoughts?
Yeah. One is, again, I would keep things very simple. I would go ahead and make yourself a structured water device. Do more research. Look up Clayton Knowles, and there's other people that have gone deep into this area, and there's lots on YouTube and talking about. I'm sure on YouTube there's other people saying it's all garbage and no, don't look at this. Let me distract you over here with some other nonsense. but yeah, there's a lot of, I would want people to truly understand what double vortexing of water does and how that works. But you can make this device yourself and start enjoying living structured water in your life. And then from there, you can easily see how you could make a device and put it in line for your community, and then add in a couple of tanks, and then maybe put in an RO or a carbon-based filter system. And you know, you don't have to get fancy, or you don't have to get you don't have to be a super scientist to figure this stuff out. It's just basic intuition once you understand the difference between the water that most of us have been consuming and living structured water, and how nature wants you to have this type of water.
Great.
Thank you.
That's great. I'm gonna go do some double vortexing research. And
Good.
And yeah, we really appreciate everything that you're adding to the fight for bringing, you know, clean, energized water to communities across the world. So, thank you, Justin.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
A new type of news. New Earth news.